Let's discuss some monitoring tools that we have available for you or that you could just use because they're part of your infrastructure or because you want to make them part of your infrastructure. For some, we'll just talk about the family of the tools, and for others about very specific tools. On the IT side, on the networking side, I'm assuming that you get a hint, that you get an alert when your network goes down, when your load balancer, web servers, routers, network connection, outside connection, upstream, uplink goes down. If that is the case, then, well, you probably want to act on it no matter if it's only Liferay that is not available anymore or everything that's not available anymore. Application server or application performance monitoring, there we have the JVM. After all, we have a Java virtual machine running, so that's Java running with all the standard Java monitoring that you can have. You can have the same for your database. If that one goes down, you should get the alert from your network monitoring or from your monitoring software, not from your CEO who is calling you and asking where your system is. And then, of course, you can monitor user behavior, user sessions, the number of user sessions. On the IT monitoring side, I don't really want to go too deep. There are a few things that we will talk about, but I would say the main monitoring tools on the Java side, the Java EE side, are listed here: JConsole, Java Mission Control, Java Flight Recorder. I'd say whatever you feel familiar with, whatever you have in your house anyways, use it. If you don't have any of these tools, evaluate them and choose the one that you like the most. On the monitoring side for all of your applications that basically go full stack if you want to. So we list here YourKit, New Relic, Dynatrace, but it's basically shorthand for all of the APM tools that you can get on the market, the application performance monitoring tools that go full stack down to the infrastructure and up to the HTML, HTTP level that will monitor the answering time behavior of your system, that will alert you if a request takes more than a configured amount of time. If a request takes more than a second, then you can get an alert. Your user habits. If you want, or if you have a few popular sites and a few popular pages that everybody always comes to because they're on page 1 of Google, then you might want to optimize those pages or get an alert when these pages are actually overloading your system. There is something that can be done on the content side. We have a few plugins in Liferay that actually provide automatic and dynamic filtering of content. However, whenever you do that on a very popular page, you will have dynamic filtering every single request, and you might not want that on the very popular pages. The keyword here is Asset Publisher, our Swiss Army knife of content management, of publishing. If you use Asset Publisher on a really popular page, then you will filter on a really popular page on every single request, which drains down your performance. If that brings you over the hump of needing another server, this might be the only optimization you need. So you might want to have a static or a cached landing page and then do the dynamic filtering on other pages where you can gain from it. Also, how many of these users are coming at the same time? I actually want to add this chapter anyways. I often get asked for performance tuning and dimensioning of servers. How many servers do you need to handle a certain amount of users? And as we're here on user habits on site, what do these users do on the site? Guess what? I'm going to turn the page around and I'm going to see if you know the answer. How many servers, like appropriately sized servers, let's say the typical servers that you would buy these days, without getting further into details, would you need to have 1,000 users, to handle 1,000 users? 10,000 users? 100,000 users. Let's go with 100,000 users. How many servers do you need for 100,000 users? Turning the camera around. Depends. It depends. Yes. Why is only one answering this question? It should have been a choir. It depends. What does it depend on?
What the users are
What the users are doing, yes. What's on the page, yes. Anything else? What's on the page, what the users are doing. Yeah, that's actually quite it. That's kind of a very broad way. We can interpret that in a broad way. What else is running on the server? Maybe, but that's your own fault if you run other things on the servers. Yeah, that's basically it. What are the users doing? And what do the page contain? We spoke about Asset Publisher on your most popular landing page. That might be not a good idea, or it's a good opportunity for performance tuning. And what are these users doing? One of my pet peeves, or one of my frequently named examples is, I told you about the password hashing on the Liferay side, which really drains down the performance. However, it's still good to cover in an intranet, especially when the people are coming in between 7 and 9. When all of your employees come in and sign in between 5 to 8 and 5 past 8 with a peak at 8 o'clock, that might be not such a good idea, because at exactly this time, you might just have the peak load and completely overload just with the login requests, because there's all this password hashing going on, depending on the number of users you have. So the actual value that you're looking for is not how many users do I have, but how many concurrent users do I have, and what are they doing during these concurrent operations. Oh, and by the way, in order to figure out how many users can my servers handle, you actually got to measure it anyways. We can give you a few hints. There is a performance white paper on Liferay, which you can download, where we did a few measurements, a few different scenarios, just a very brutal operation of logging into the portal and logging out, logging in, logging out, and other operations, which is just simulating concurrent users that click on the portal and go through authenticated content and unauthenticated content. And it gives you a few different numbers of what can be handled, and also by which hardware that can be handled. So it might be worth looking at it if you're really interested in that question. Another way to get your question answered is to get in contact with Liferay's Global Services. They will be asking you a bunch of questions that you'll have to answer, and then in the end you'll get an idea of the order of magnitude that you require. Okay, enough of a sidetrack of this. Let's continue, because we have logs. Quite often when something happens in your system and you say, well, you open a ticket for support and you say something doesn't work. First thing support asks you for is, can you post the logs? And yes, you can, because you will find the logs somewhere in your Liferay home, in your app server logs. So for example, in Tomcat, that has a log directory, and Liferay itself has a log directory in Liferay home. And what gets logged and on what level? Well, there is a default that gets logged, and you can change the default. And you can do so in Control Panel. We have the very tiny excerpt from the user interface here, but it's in Control Panel. In Server Administration, there is a log level page, a log level tab, where you can add new Java packages, Java classes, hierarchy levels, and set the appropriate level from error to warn, info, debug, and so on. This is something where we deliberately only have a tiny portion of the user interface here, because typically when you have a problem, support will tell you which category to increase the log on. Now, if you do so, you might just overload your log system, so it can write a lot of information to your file. And with that, I would like to soothe your alarm, so to say. If you are alarmed by this, by lots of stuff being written to your log files, anything that you change through Liferay's user interface in the log levels will be reverted once you restart the server. So if you go to Control Panel, Server Administration, and the log levels, and you change anything there, you add anything, that's good until the next restart. Some say, oh my God, then I need to do this all of the time. And some say, yay, great, because if you now write megabytes and megabytes of log that I don't need after a while because my problem is fixed. I just forgot to reset this. Sooner or later it will be reset. So I rather like this. And yes, there is a different way that you'll also find in documentation to increase the log level persistently, but you typically don't want that in a persistent way, because if you have persistent problems, then we'll work with you on fixing them persistently. Quick mid-chapter review here. You should actually be monitoring, I guess, because we want the system to be responsive. You don't want your CEO to be your monitoring system. You can cover IT monitoring, just your infrastructure, your uplink, and so on. The application performance monitoring side, Liferay is currently partnering with Dynatrace. So that's a quite well integrated system. This is not an embracement, but this is just what we currently partner with. But there are other, like almost all of the other APM systems actually work really well, and they're integrating quite well. So whatever you have, I would say you probably have one of those systems anyways. Could even go down to Nagios. Then just use what you have, and please use it. Please make good use of it. User monitoring, just keep an eye on what your users do, if they sign in, what they see, how many of them sign in at the same time, and their experience. And happy enough or lucky enough, application performance monitoring tools, the APM tools, will give you some insight into their experience as well. Because I will tell you what the current loading time for a single page is, and if that's a good or a bad experience for the users. We didn't speak about the audit tools that we have. Liferay DXP comes with some audit tools. Liferay CE doesn't come with them, but I've seen a community implementation of the audit implementation or the audit framework. And we then also can point you to the logs, either of your application server, let's say Tomcat, or of the Liferay logs themselves, Liferay specific logs, and in Control Panel you can transiently configure new log levels.